For one, I'd rather you think I'm pushy or thirsty than rather think that I'm some type of doormat that you can just come in and talk to me and take my time and attention whenever you want. Like, Mom, you're not treating me like that.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you're tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheeler.
Hey, so we are so excited. We are still in our question of the day series, and if you have a question, you can submit it anonymously anywhere in our bio, and we'll get right to it as soon as possible, as much as we can. So, what is the question for this week? Let's just get right into it.
Yeah, today's Monday, so the start of the week, new question.
Technically, they listen to it on Tuesday, but
oh, that's right.
Yep.
Tuesday's still the beginning of the week, though. It's not. Anyway, early middle. Anyway, yeah. I mean, okay. Questions. Let's do the question. The question is, how do you avoid getting trapped in the talking stage when you've already known of someone and you've talked before in the past? How can you do this as a woman and not seem pushy or thirsty?
So you've talked to somebody already. We've talked about talking on the page before, but it's been a while. So I think it'll be good to do a refresher, because I doubt you even remember what we said on the talking episode. We've talked about talking in general before on the podcast.
Which are very broad topics. What do you mean, do I remember?
Do you remember talking about that?
Yes, I remember we had that episode.
Okay. But we've never talked about talking to someone you've already talked to before. Because I feel like that's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah, you basically have history.
So, first of all, would you ever do that?
Would I ever talk to somebody
do you think
that I
you would
talked
have
to
done
before? That? Sure, why not? I mean, it all depends on how things ended, right? Why? You wouldn't?
I mean, you know me. I'm the type of person. I agree with you. It does depend on how things ended,
or what happened,
or what happened.
Stop talking,
right? But like, if it was something recent, like if y'all talked last year,
that's recent to you a year ago.
What has changed?
A lot can change in a year.
Like what?
Like your whole life. Somebody can move, somebody can get a new job, somebody can have a child in a year, somebody can buy a house. Think about how different your life was last year. Somebody can get saved, go to a new church. Did I already say move? Someone can pass away. A lot of things can happen. People get divorced in a year. A lot can happen. A year is a long time. I think I'm going to say recent, like 3 months. Like, that's kind of soon, I think, to pick something up that you just dropped.
So, on this podcast, we love to have definitions to make sure we're all on the same page.
It's funny that you say we, but
you don't like to have definitions.
I do.
So why are you?
But it's saying you're saying to me like I haven't been here.
I'm saying it for the listeners.
Oh, but you were looking at me saying,
yeah, because I'm sitting next to you.
He's talking to you guys, not me.
Wow, you are. Ooh, praise God. So we love to have definitions, and the source I'm about to use is not necessarily the most credible. UrbanDictionary.com. You've used it before.
If it's not credible, I think it's credible.
So what does talking even mean? Urban Dictionary says when two people basically flirt and start feeling each other and they are just slowly getting into a relationship. Now, another definition I found was Google AI. The overview. I don't know how I feel about that yet. Sometimes I be looking up stuff on Google and it's like, yo, I want to get to the articles. Like, what is this like? Have you seen that on Google?
Of course. I mean, they want you to use their resources and their technology that they've developed.
I don't know how I feel about that. But it says Google AI says the talking stage is a phase in a relationship that occurs between being introduced to someone and officially dating, which I feel like is like a fair overview.
Okay, so you do like it.
I like that definition. I'm saying in general, I don't know if I like
AI, the Google AI.
It's just in my way. I ain't used to it.
It's trying to make it succinct for you, quick.
So, do you agree with those definitions?
I mean, I think that they both can apply depending on what the situation is that you're in. I think the Urban Dictionary one, the last part about slowly getting into a relationship is a little presumptuous. Just because you're talking to someone doesn't mean that you necessarily want to be in a relationship with them, i.e. like boyfriend, girlfriend. But then also relationship can be a pretty broad term. You can have a relationship with somebody that it's not like, defined. You still have a relationship.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So the person said the thing that jumped out to me in the question was trapped.
Uh-huh.
I didn't like seeing that word because I feel like you can only think you're trapped in any type of relationship if you feel like that's the only relationship you can have. So more specifically with a romantic relationship. Mm-hmm. Like if you feel trapped, that's not healthy.
Sure.
You disagree?
No, I said sure.
Sure is not, but that's not like, yeah, like I rock with that.
Yeah. You want me to
Yeah,
have you?
I just want you to say what you feel.
Yeah.
Did that word jump out to you?
Did trapped jump out to me? Not the first time. I mean, now that you're highlighting it, I definitely see like, oh yeah, that's kind of some interesting language to use about getting trapped or feeling stuck in a certain stage of getting to know someone. It's kind of like, you know, do you feel you have no options? Are you locked in a room? But what stood out to me was trying to understand the part that says when you've already known of someone and you've talked before in the past. Because when you were going into like, the talking stage, I don't really necessarily know that that's what she means. What? I think that the saying you've talked before in the past, I mean, it could mean what you're saying, but also could just mean like, I guess I wouldn't put knowing of someone and talking with them together. Because when you say you know of someone, it's kind of like someone I feel like you've heard of in passing, or maybe you've said hello once or twice, or maybe I think of someone who like, think about school and like you're in the same class, but you've never actually talked to each other. So like, you know their name, they know yours, but you've never actually had a relationship or like talked or worked together.
But she said we've talked in the past.
It says you've talked before in the past. Okay, right. But I don't know if that meant like we're talking, like we talked one-on-one.
That's fair. We doing our best out here with these vague-ish questions sometimes.
You're right. But anyway, yeah, but back to the getting trapped part. Yeah, I don't know if you can avoid getting trapped. Because think about other situations that you're trapped in. Because I don't think you can get trapped in an emotional state with another person.
So what I heard you say was, I don't think you can avoid being trapped. Is that what you meant to say?
Yeah, so like I guess when I think about being trapped and like just the context of the term being like getting trapped, I'm trapped in a closet. Obviously you can accidentally lock yourself out of a house or into a closet, but most of the time when you're trapped somewhere, you didn't put yourself there. You know, like if you got locked into a closet or a room or something like that, usually somebody puts you in.
I've never locked myself into a room.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Most of the time when you get trapped somewhere, you didn't do it to yourself. Somebody locked you in there, right? Okay. Or like locked in a car or something like that. Now, just kind of bear with me here. But I think that it's more of like a mindset shift that needs to happen here when it comes to the talking stage. Like, you shouldn't feel like you're trapped in it. You shouldn't feel like you're really trapped in anything. I'll say maybe somebody can feel like they're trapped in a marriage, but I think that if you feel trapped in a talking stage, that just makes me a little bit kind of interested and curious about what your sense of freedom is. Why do you feel like it's not something you can leave or that you have options in?
Yeah, I heard a preacher say one time, if God is the God of exits, I'm never trapped. And I thought that's so dope. Such a good saying to remind yourself, going back to the mindset piece of, if I feel trapped, maybe it is something mentally, especially in the talking stage. Like, just lose their number. Like, I feel like
ghost?
It's like, don't ghost, but it shouldn't be that hard to get out of a talking relationship unless it is like some safety concern. You scared they're gonna follow you home or something. Like,
that's still not really a trapped situation. No, that's just not.
I can see how somebody feels trapped, though.
No.
What do you mean no?
Because like, so when you're trapped, the talking stage is like, I get what this person is trying to say, and we're kind of being like a stickler for words and phrases here, because I think she's probably trying to say like, oh, we're in the talking stage for too long, because a lot of people want to be in the talking stage because it means that you're interested in each other, you're getting to know each other, very casual, very fun, or that's how it should be anyway. But I think if you're trapped in this talking stage, makes you think that you've experienced this before, maybe with this person or maybe with somebody else. Because she said the second part of the question is, how can you do this as a woman and not seem pushy or thirsty? I guess you're trying to encourage things to move along and like get him to make you his girlfriend, or maybe make him take you out on a date or something like that, where you're now moving from talking to actually dating and not just texting or FaceTiming and talking on the phone. I think that a lot of this is knowing your role, and then also making sure that you are being intentional about who you're getting in these stages with.
Can you give some practical details on that?
Practical details.
Like, that sounds good, but what the heck does that mean? Like, what you just said.
So it means don't get into the talking stage with somebody who doesn't know what they want. Because if a guy knows what he wants, then he will be quicker to make decisions. Because it sounds like you're in a situation where it's like, oh, I've been talking to this guy for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. Nothing's been happening. We just keep talking on the phone.
But when you're talking to somebody, you don't really know them yet. So how can you know that you're talking to somebody that doesn't know what they want?
I think you have to have boundaries. So like having it, like, all right, for me, I will talk to a guy for 3 weeks. After that
was your rule.
A decision has to be made. No, I don't even remember what my rule was. But I think that like you have to decide whatever your time frame is. You know, I'm going to give this a couple of weeks. I'm going to give this a month, just depending on who you are and how much time you feel like you have or don't have, or tolerance and patience you have. I'm going to give it this amount of time. And if this amount of time passes and I don't see progress, I'm going to ask a question. Hey, what's going on here? You know, we've been talking. I've been really enjoying talking to you for X amount of time. Do you see this going anywhere else after? Like, would you ever, like, you know, are we going to go on a date or whatever it is? And some guys may feel like that's aggressive, and that's fine. Then it's aggressive. But I'm not about to, you know, just sit here and be anxious and also kind of like give you my time and energy if we're not on the same page. Because some guys, like we've talked about, you know, like they're dragging their feet in the talking stage because they're not confident that you will go on a date with them. So you asking that question, whether someone might say it's bold, it might let him know, like, oh, she's serious. Like, oh, she really does like me. I wasn't really sure, but now I know that she would say yes.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think it's hard for a woman, I can imagine, listening to this, because it's like there's no way to know how to exactly move. There's no right way or wrong way per se, because every guy is different.
Sure.
Like some guys may be shy or unconfident or whatever, and then some guys just may be dogs, and so it's hard sometimes to be able to.
But that's why you have to have your boundaries, and I think boundaries is obviously such like a popular word, especially in Christian dating culture, of like, oh, I don't do this and I don't do that, and this is where I draw the line, and that's good to have too. But I think like even in this situation, having if then boundaries. So if I am going to text a guy all day and night, or all day long, then I'm going to give it this amount of time, and then after this amount of time, I'm going to ask a question. I'm not going to be texting a guy all day long, laughing, joking, sending memes, gifts, you know, like sharing things about myself, learning things about him for days and weeks and months, and just let it go on and on and on without any type of commitment or understanding. Because every time you give somebody your energy and your time and your attention, you're giving away like parts of yourself. And I'm not trying to make it sound more than what it is, like spiritual or whatever, but that's time you could be investing into your friends or your family or your job or your house or yourself. So it's not just you have to take your time very seriously, even if it's just 2 minutes of texting a day. Like, that's 2 minutes you can be doing something else.
So if you were talking to somebody every day for 5 days in a row, right? Like, you texting until the night, and then in the morning you pick it right back up where it left off, and then you're still unclear. So you ask a question like, hey, what is this?
Yeah. What
do you feel like as a woman is a good enough answer to be comfortable to move forward? And I understand that every woman's going to be different. Good enough answer. But so, like, are you looking for that guy to say, yeah, I want to take you out tonight, actually? I was going to ask you that. Or is it like, hey, like, I would love to call you? Like, is it okay to have a chill next step? Like, he wants to set up a phone call now. Or does it have to be something more concrete?
Yeah, it all of course is very like situational, but I think that's a good point. It's like there needs to be some type of progress, because to your point, there are some guys who are unserious, and you having that boundary and like asking that question because she asked, how do you avoid this and not seem pushy or thirsty? Because number one, you have to be willing to look pushy and or thirsty to this guy or whoever you're talking to, because I'm for one, I'd rather you think I'm pushy or thirsty than rather think that I'm some type of doormat that you can just come in and talk to me and take my time and attention whenever you want. Like, you're not treating me like that. So I'd rather you think that I'm aggressive and bold and whatever than think that you're somebody that you're not going to treat well. People are gonna think what they're gonna think about you, but at the end of the day, you need to be who you are and like be proud of who you are and be who the Lord has called you to be. I think sometimes as women, we spend too much time trying to like paint this picture of like, oh, I'm like quiet and submissive and this and that, and like that's not even really what submissive even means. Being submissive doesn't mean not asking questions. It just like a lot of times being a good wife, not that you're a wife in this situation, means asking your husband good questions and making sure like, hey, we're going in the right path that we decided however long ago with the Lord that we were gonna go.
I wish I remember what you asked me. So when we were talking before we ever went on a date or anything, we talked for like maybe 5 days straight.
Yeah, a week or something like that.
You asked, I was serious, but I was still working on my confidence a little bit.
Yep.
You had to ask me a question, but I don't remember exactly what you said. But whatever question you asked me, I didn't feel like, and maybe this is a good thing to hear, as to understand, like, am I dealing with a guy who's interested in me or a guy who's trying to play me? Whenever you ask me a question, I did not feel like, oh my gosh, this girl's pushy. Yeah. I felt, like you said, oh, this is an invitation for me to be able to go deeper safely.
Yeah.
Because y'all don't realize how hard it is out here for men to have to put themselves out there over and over again until they find their wife. And sometimes you get tired. Sometimes you're just trying to work up on your own confidence. And that's not your problem as the woman, but that is the context that some men may be dealing with. And I think for me, it was just a catalyst. So it could either be a catalyst or deterrent. Either way, you're getting what you need, which is clarity on whether you want to keep talking to this guy or not, low key.
Right, because that was one other thing I was going to say too is, by you asking this question, some guys are going to give you the runaround. Like, oh, what you mean? Like, we're good. Like, I'm having a good time talking to you. Like, isn't that enough? Da-da-da. That's your answer. Thank you. Have a nice life. Like, anytime they're trying to downplay the situation, like, oh, we're just friends, we're cool, like, I just, enjoy talking to you, make me laugh, whatever. Like, okay, great, thank you. Like, I'm glad that you think that I'm nice to talk to. I think so, too. I will go out and try to find, or make myself available for my husband.
Because I was annoyed that you asked me the question, but I wasn't annoyed at you. I was annoyed at me that you even had to ask me first.
Yeah.
So, do you remember what you asked me?
I don't, but I remember what you said, which is the funny part. Like, your response.
Keep that to yourself. Yeah. So, what did I say? What did I say?
It was something you already kind of mentioned it, saying like, "Oh yeah, I was about to, I was about to ask you tonight, if you'd be interested."
And I meant that. I was
meeting up, and like, I've been having a good time talking to you, and I would love to take you out on a date sometime. And I was like, "Oh really? Like, how interesting."
Did you believe me, or you thought I was blowing smoke?
I mean, I believed you because you actually started following up on it. It wasn't just like, oh, a week has passed and like I hadn't heard anything. I think that like. Yeah, it was. I mean, you said everything right after. I just thought it was interesting that but you told me afterwards, I wasn't sure, I was kind of trying to feel my confidence.
I had some issues.
Yeah, and we were a lot younger, and sometimes, the older somebody is, they're more confident that they are. So it just depends on your situation and like the guy that you're talking to. But I don't think you need to be concerned about how you come off. I think you need to be concerned about guarding your heart, and you need to be concerned about protecting your time and your heart and your life, and making sure that you're valuing yourself the way that God does.
Yeah, that's a good point about guarding your heart, because the Bible tells us to guard our heart above all else. So that's why it's not cute, it's not godly to just be texting somebody you have no interest in, whether you're a man or a woman, just because you don't want your phone dry. because that's not being a good steward of the other person's heart, treating them as you would want to be treated. Because even if you're not interested, they may actually be.
Right.
And they're getting excited, like, oh, this girl or this guy's finally starting to, like, engage with me.
Yeah.
And the whole time you just sitting there, no interest at all. And that person's heart's going to be hurt.
Right.
It may not be the biggest heartbreak in the world. That's not what we're trying to say. But still, the fact that you hurt somebody at all, that shouldn't be what you want.
Yeah, and even, like, having that mentality is just really important to squash as soon as you can, of, like, basically filling, when you're bored, and, like, filling your time with just kind of having people to entertain you and keep you company when you have no commitment or responsibility towards them. Because that's honestly how a lot of people, if you don't squash that and, like, kill that mentality, if you have it as soon as you can, sometimes it can show up when you're married, and then, like, oh, I'm just talking to so-and-so from wherever, like, you know, how people get work husbands and work wives, and, like, oh, I'm just bored, and, you know, my real wife or husband is, like, busy or not available or whatever, and, like, you kind of fall into this trap of, like, oh, it's just for fun, it's just for fun. And, like, obviously having friendships are for fun too. Like, godly friendships are not just fun, they're also edifying and encouraging and challenging. But sometimes you do have friends that you know, it's just important to do everything with a purpose, because even if you have friendships that are not Christ-centered, or they're people who are not believers, like, you know, I'm not saying you preach at them every time you talk to them, but in the back of your mind, you should always be kind of praying and asking the Lord, hey, God, what do you want to do with this friendship? Like, even though you guys may connect over basketball or some type of hobby or something like that, like, obviously that's a great thing, but also in the back of your mind, like, make sure that you're praying for them and loving on them in a way that is, you know, your goal should be to lead them to the Lord. Because if you don't have purpose in your friendships, guys or girls, but especially the ones that are opposite sex, it can lead to a lot of trouble when you're married. I mean, and when you're not married too.
Yeah. Now, the whole talking situation, because it can be so vague and it can be a weird time, I just had this thought earlier today when we're thinking about Christ and how the Bible talks about marriage is a reflection of Christ and God's love for the church. Mm-hmm. And you just think about how Christ pursued us before, like, all that God had to do, Jesus had to do to die on the cross. It was a lot. Yeah. Like, if you think about the fact that he was God, he laid down his divinity in order to come here as a baby.
Right. So humble.
As a baby. Do you realize what babies are?
Yes.
Not useless, but, like, yeah, like,
he
came here as a baby and had to allow the person he created to wipe his butt and boss him around. Like, that is just some humility that I don't think we give enough credit to Jesus for. But my whole point in saying that is that if marriage is a reflection of God pursuing his church, then I feel like a man's pursuit of his woman can't be weak. Like, if we're really trying to imitate or emulate what Christ did, we got to be careful as men coming weak to a woman, because that's not how Christ came for us.
Yeah.
Now, let me break this down even further, because we talked about how Christ was super humble. Mm-hmm. The fact that he came as a baby. But something we don't talk about enough is how submitted Christ was to God. And Christ always said, I don't do anything unless my Father tells me to do it. Like, he's constantly talking about how he's submitted to God's authority. And if you're not willing to submit to someone in your pursuit of a woman, I think you're in error. Like, I don't know if you can say that you're a disciple of Jesus and you are pursuing a woman and you don't have nobody else in your life that you're talking to about that situation, that you're submitting that situation to, like, hey, what do you think about this? I'm about to do this. Like, I had that when I was trying to pursue you. I had people in my life who I thought of as authority, who, if they said don't do that, I wouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's something that we got to be mindful of as men, is making sure that we're not out here trying to be Lone Ranger trying to do things on our own, because that's how the devil can easily pick you off.
Yeah.
Because you don't have anybody. And just not forget the spiritual stuff, but even just practically, like having somebody that can look out for you and say, hey, you're taking her out on this first date. Why don't you get some flowers? Get some candy, get some chocolates, whatever. Why don't you add to the experience than just picking her up?
Right.
Not even opening the door for her. Like, somebody that can help you take your game to the next level, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's, I totally agree. And I know that it's not the easiest thing to do, because even guys who love God and pursue God on their own, I know that it can be hard to find not just peers, but like godly men who are ahead of them to give them that type of guidance. And I think any man who loves God would love that and would love to have, you know, something like you had, like a mentor, big brother, to kind of coach them along. But it's not the easiest thing to find.
Yeah.
So I don't want anyone to hear that and be like, yeah, that sounds really good, but like, where do I find somebody like that? I mean, honestly, of course you want, number one, the Holy Spirit to be that for you if you don't have somebody in your life, because he's always there and always a good counselor. And sometimes we want people to like fill that spot, where like God is meant to fill that spot for a certain, you know, well, forever, but it's just him sometimes. But then also I think that like a lot of times I'm finding just with like the older generation, I know this is true with like the women that I've spoken to, but I think it's true for guys too. You can chime in. But a lot of times older people don't want to give advice unless they're asked. So sometimes if you like want that, like you really have to like be bold enough to walk up to somebody in the lobby at church, or like after your connect group or small group or at your job or whatever, and say, hey, I really admire you. I know I don't know everything about you and like your story. I would love to learn more, but I would just really like to be around you more and learn more from you. Especially, you know, if you do have a woman in your life, or like you're trying to pursue a certain girl and it's not really like going the way, or you're just looking for a wife and praying to meet your wife in general. I think that, you know, sometimes as our generation, we want people to come alongside and say, hey, I believe in you and I want to pour into you. And that's really great if that happens. But I think more often than not, we have to invite people into our lives.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. And I agree that there's for sure somebody listening to this and like, I don't have that. And I do believe that as you continue to pray about it and talk to the Lord about it, that he will provide someone to be that in your life. But this is why it's really important, if as much as possible, to be connected to a healthy church. And I understand that can be a whole nother situation where it's hard to find that. Mm-hmm. But you have to be willing to continue to search for it if you don't feel like you have that. And if you do feel like you're in a place where you're at a church and you're connected to a community where you have older believers around, like Pauline said, you do have to put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot. It's another way to put yourself out there. I remember putting myself out there and asking the man who was the mentor for our relationship while we were dating, I look stupid. I know for 1,000% I look stupid. I didn't do it right. They told me no at first. But guess what? God was with me. And I am not special. Like, you also have God who wants to help you in your journey. And there are people out there who are going to be able to help you along the way. And I think sometimes it doesn't, like, saying, oh, find a mentor, or saying find somebody to help you may sound more daunting than it needs to be. Like, honestly, what it can be is just asking a question. Yeah. Like, hey, I found this lady that I'm interested in. I'm thinking about doing X, Y, Z. What do you think about that? Mm-hmm. And just literally just asking the question, seeing what they say, and then going from there. Instead of going up to them and say, hey, I found this lady. Can you be my mentor for my rest of my relationship? Like, that's a whole different pressure and level. Like, most people, especially Christians, will answer a question.
Sure, yeah, for sure. And they'll feel honored. And that's kind of the approach that I've always taken, of like, instead of asking someone to be my mentor, it's more like, hey, I want to ask you a question. and then ask a question, and it's like ask another question, and the next thing you know, you're treating them like your mentor.
Dudes will do that with me.
Yeah,
at church. Like they'll ask me a question, and I have, and maybe it's just because I love helping people with relationships, but I have no problem answering any questions that somebody asks me
it's
in
an
person.
Easy yes, and then over time they're like, yeah, that guy has really good questions. I like him. And then 6 months in, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, can I take you out to dinner? It's like, oh yeah, you know, we always have a great conversation, great question, whatever, you know, versus kind of just coming in too hot from the beginning. How does this get into a mentorship conversation?
And maybe it's where the Lord wanted it to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like we were more talking to men, but of course that applies to women as well. Because, yeah, the talking stage, I mean, I feel like it's so cool to see how much, like, dating evolves and, like, how much it grows and ebbs and flows with the culture. Because I don't think the talking stage was really, you know, something that was around 30 years ago, maybe because there wasn't texting and, you know, all of that.
Can I say something? Because you said, how did it get to a mentorship talk, low-key? And I think that's because the talking stage can be so ambiguous that you need guidance. You need other people looking into the situation to help you navigate it. Because it can be easy to get trapped when you're by yourself.
Sure.
But if I have somebody outside the door that I trap myself in that can help me get out, it's much easier than me sitting there banging on the door trying to get out myself. Mm-hmm. If we want to go back to her trapped analogy that she used.
Oh, yeah, the language that she used. Yeah, because you should feel free as a bird in the talking stage. Like, you see something you don't like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, you should try to keep the talking stage as light as possible.
Yes.
Like, you really do not need to be going super deep. Really deep at all.
Yeah,
it should really just be like, what's your favorite color? Like, it should be super
because honestly,
chill.
I feel like if you do the talking stage right, but it's not somebody who you would want to potentially have a relationship with, because that's all you're really trying to figure out. You're not trying to figure out, do I want to marry this person based off of talking? You should come out with it with like a potential friendship, you know, like you guys, it should be like, oh, he's cool, but you know, not for me. She's cool, but not for me. I'm not saying that you should try to make friends off of everyone you talk to, but I just think like it doesn't need to be as deep as sometimes people make it out to be. That's why like talking really heavy all day long can be kind of a bit much.
With no guidance, no plan.
Yeah, well, if it's flowing, it's flowing, and if it's fun and safe and all that stuff. But I think that, you know, sometimes it can be, like, just a lot of pressure on it. Like, even using the word, like, trapped. Like, why is there so much pressure on the talking stage to be trapped in it? And you shouldn't really be pushing anybody to go to the next level. You're just asking questions and seeing how they respond.
Yeah. So, remember, you ain't never trapped if you with God, because there's always an exit. Even when there's temptation, the Bible tells us that. He will show you a way out. We talked about that a few weeks ago. So please, if you feel like that, you need to have some serious conversation with the Lord and with your community, because maybe you need some better boundaries.
Yeah. Like, you shouldn't be going all in where you're putting so much pressure on yourself and they're talking stage. It's okay.
Yeah. This has been another episode of the W Podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.